You know, some names just stick with you. Take El Gab, the mother of pots. It sounds almost like a children's story title, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yet it points to the very earliest royal burials in Egypt. And it really makes you wonder, why so many pots? What were they doing there? What can they tell us?
It's a question that opens up a fascinating look into the ancient world. Today, we're taking a deep dive into ancient Egypt, drawing from a really rich collection of encyclopedia entries,
Right.
covering everything from the grandest monuments to, the details of everyday life and the long sweep of their history.
Exactly. Our goal is to sift through this incredible amount of information and, well, extract the most compelling insights, those details that make you go, aha, and connect them.
Hmm.
Connect them in a way that paints a vivid picture of this civilization for you. We want to explore royal practices, what daily life was like for the average Egyptian, and the core beliefs that truly shaped their world.
And these encyclopedia entries give us a fantastic foundation, offering a broad yet detailed overview. Archaeology, cultural practices, history.
Hmm.
It's a really solid starting point for our exploration.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with that intriguing name, El Gaab. It's located in the northwestern desert and dates back to the Second Dynasty. We're talking, what, late 3rd millennium BCE?
That's right. And nearby is Shunet El Zabib, the storehouse of dates.
Storehouse of dates suggests organization, right?
Definitely. A well-established society even then.
Hmm.
But it's El Gaab, the mother of pots, that really grabs you because of the sheer number of these vessels found there.
So these pots, they were funerary offerings.
Exactly. What's remarkable here is that connection. These weren't just everyday containers, they were deliberately placed in the graves.
To provide for the deceased in the afterlife?
Precisely. The sheer volume really emphasizes how important these provisions were in the early dynastic period. It also indicates, significant resources are being dedicated to royal burials incredibly early on. And it's important to remember that the actual cenotaphs, these were symbolic tombs, commemorative tombs for these early royal figures. They were also located right there at El Gab.
Symbolic tombs. Interesting. And then as time moves on, we see a shift, don't we?
We do. Later, during the Middle and Early New Kingdom, cenotaphs start appearing south of El Gab.
It's almost as if the royal focus is gradually shifting south.
Yeah, you find Senvosret III's temple and cenotaph in that area, possibly Ahmosi's pyramid, Tedasheri's mortuary complex.
So that whole general region held significant meaning for centuries, even as their specific practices evolved. Maybe a shift in power towards Thebes or something.
That's a strong possibility. That migration of focus south might indicate a strategic realignment, maybe religious significance shifting. But the geographical clustering over such a long time, it tells a story about the continuity of sacred space.
Right, even as styles changed.
Each dynasty, in a way, built upon the legacy of those who came before, sometimes quite literally in the same area.
And speaking of early royal burials, Dieter's tomb at Abydos takes us even further back. First dynasty.
Oh, that one's fascinating.
It didn't just stay a tomb, did it? It became something more.
Exactly. It eventually became a major religious site. Originally, it was a rectangular pit, storage chambers, timber roof.
And can you imagine discovering that arm inside? Adorned with bracelets gold, turquoise, lapis lazuli, amethyst.
An incredible glimpse into the wealth and artistry. But then you also have this much larger tomb at Saqqara from the same period.
Which makes you wonder about the different scales of commemoration, even within one reign.
Absolutely. But what's truly remarkable about Djo's tomb is how it was later identified as the burial place of Osiris.
Osiris, one of the most important gods. How does a king's tomb become a god's tomb?
That transformation speaks volumes about the evolving religious landscape. Centuries later, Kinjer even installed an Osiris bed there.
Solidifying that connection.
And it stayed a popular pilgrimage site for ages. It shows the enduring power of myth, how royal monuments could be reinterpreted, get imbued with new religious meaning.
It really blows your mind. A royal burial, then centuries later, a major holy site. Amazing how places accumulate meaning.
It is.
Then we move ahead a bit, Third Dynasty, Djoser's step pyramid at Saqqara, Imhotep's design. This is a huge leap, right?
Monumental, absolutely. It's essentially stacked mastabas, those rectangular tombs.
Reaching over 200 feet high, massive base, limestone facing,
Right.
and a whole complex around it.
Yes, with replicas of buildings used for the Sised festival.
Oh, okay, the said festival, What was the significance there? Was it about the king's renewal?
Exactly. It was a ritual celebrating the renewal of the pharaoh's power.
Yeah.
Having replicas in the complex suggests they wanted that renewal to continue in the afterlife,
Yeah.
mirroring the earthly rituals.
Like an entire afterlife city for the pharaoh, with walls, gateways.
Imhotep's innovation wasn't just about size. It was fundamentally reconceptualizing the tomb as this powerful statement of divinity and power. The step design itself, maybe a stairway to the heavens,
Makes sense.
it marked a major shift.
And from those steps, we get to the smooth sides. Fourth dynasty, Giza, Khufu's Great Pyramid, Khafre, Menkaure, instantly recognizable,
Wonder of the world.
and the Sphinx standing guard. The scale, the precision, it's almost unbelievable.
Staggering.
And the encyclopedia mentions these almost fantastical tales about the dynasty women in fishnets, parting waters, prophecies.
Yeah, those stories add this layer of mystique, don't they?
What do they tell us? How they wanted to be seen, maybe? Or just popular imagination running wild?
Probably a bit of both. It adds to the aura of power,
Hmm.
but you also get glimpses of, well, maybe things weren't always smooth sailing.
Like internal rivalries. And Shepseskaf's tomb.
Right, Shepseskaf built the Pharaoh's bench, not another grand pyramid. It suggests shifts in priorities, maybe power struggles, maybe resource constraints.
These massive projects must have taken immense resources.
Absolutely. Giza represents the absolute peak of that kind of monumental ambition. The organization, the sheer determination. It's incredible.
But the later shift shows it wasn't always the only way, or maybe not always possible.
Exactly, which raises questions about the motivations and what led to later changes.
Okay, so we've talked about these incredible tombs, but what about the people building them, feeding the kingdom? Let's pivot to daily life, agriculture.
Good idea. The foundation of it all.
The encyclopedia gives us a glimpse. Staple crops, emmer for bread, barley for beer. It's interesting wheat didn't arrive until much later, the Ptolemaic period.
That's a key detail. Emmer and barley were foundational. Bread and beer, the absolute essentials.
And the later arrival of wheat shows how things could change, maybe through contact with other cultures.
For sure. And it wasn't just bread and beer, of course. They had chickpeas, lentils, pomegranates.
Lettuce, onions, carob, garlic, sesame for oil, honey as sweetener spices, olive oil too.
It sounds like a surprisingly diverse diet, actually.
It does, though we need to be careful, right? What was available versus what the average person ate regularly.
That's a very important distinction. The encyclopedia points out meat wasn't a daily thing for most people.
Even though cattle herds were large sometimes.
Yes, they did eat beef, mutton, pork, though sometimes restricted goat, possibly antelope. But plant-based foods were likely the bulk of the diet for commoners.
Gives us a more nuanced picture.
And underpinning all of this agriculture was the Nile.
The lifeblood. And their water management skills, especially in the Fayum region, were crucial. Controlling that annual flood, the silt.
Absolutely critical. The flood was both a gift and a potential disaster.
Their ability to harness it with dikes, canals, ditches, particularly channeling water into the Fayum via the Bar Yusuf, that shows some serious engineering skill, doesn't it?
Really sophisticated hydraulic engineering. The big renovations in the Old Kingdom, and especially the 12th dynasty under Amenemhet III,
Right.
those were essential for maximizing the Fayum's potential, basically turning it into this super productive agricultural zone.
So, beyond just the basic crops, thriving depended on mastering water management.
Absolutely, especially in places like the Fayum.
And speaking of control and influence, let's talk about Egypt and Nubia. The encyclopedia goes way back to the A group, around 3100 BCE.
Yes, the A group. Independent people in Upper Nubia, the land of the bow.
Land of the bow. Sounds formidable.
It implies martial skill, yeah.
Right.
They had their own power, resources, beautiful gold jewelry, fine pottery, trade links even to the Mediterranean.
So, a thriving independent culture initially, with Egyptian and foreign goods in their graves, suggesting trade, but maybe as equals at first.
That seemed to be the picture. Interaction, yes, but they had their own distinct identity and networks.
But then,
Mhm.
First Dynasty pharaohs annexed part of Nubia.
And the A group effectively became an Egyptian colony. That's a real turning point. Early Egyptian expansion south.
Marking the start of a long, complex relationship.
Definitely. Alternating trade, conflict, domination, driven by Egypt's early ambitions for resources, for territory.
And that relationship kept evolving. Later, Amenhotep I restored fortresses south of Aswan, appointed a governor, Turi.
Yes, Turi. To keep order, manage trade, collect tribute. Thutmosis III later reopened and improved canals near Dal Island.
For military and trade use.
Both. But the encyclopedia notes something interesting. Limited Egyptian interest in Nubian culture or religion.
They mostly saw it as occupied territory.
Generally, yes.
Yeah.
There was some royal patronage for the Nubian god Dadan, but
Maybe strategic to keep the peace?
possibly, or foster some integration. But the overall view was imperialistic. It was about resources, control, not really cultural exchange on an equal footing.
So was it purely about dominance, or were there maybe ideological reasons for not engaging more with the culture?
That's a great question. It was fundamentally asymmetrical. Egypt had the power. Later campaigns by Siptah, and much later, Pianki fighting rebels.
Yeah.
It shows this ongoing dynamic of control and resistance.
Okay, so Egypt's influence expanding south. Let's jump much later now. Alexander the Great, Alexander.
Right. A huge shift. Founded in 331 BCE on the site of an older town, Rhodotis.
And strategically chosen, it seems. Limestone ridges, the Heptastadian Causeway creating harbors.
Eunostus, the Great Harbor, connection to Lake Mareotis.
Yeah.
The location was key. Alexander envisioned a grand Hellenistic city, a hub for trade and intellect.
Utilizing the landscape brilliantly, linking the Mediterranean to the Nile via the lake.
Absolutely critical for its success as this major international center.
And while our sources focus earlier, it's interesting that the Ptolemaic period is when wheat finally arrives along the Nile.
Yeah, it shows how even staples could change with these big cultural shifts. And Alexandria itself became this incredible melting pot of Hellenistic culture.
Exactly. Acknowledging the wheat gives us that sense of long-term evolution, and Alexandria is a fascinating later chapter in Egypt's incredibly long story.
Now let's circle back to something running through all these periods: art, architecture, and the beliefs behind them.
Yes, the underlying worldview. The encyclopedia stresses how early dynastic and Old Kingdom art developed rapidly alongside architecture, tombs, temples, masabas, pyramids.
And the decorative arts flourished too. Statues, painting, furniture, jewelry, even household items.
The connection between art and architecture seems really deep, not just practical structures.
No, they were powerful mediums for expressing beliefs, Pharaoh's authority, social order. The rapid artistic advancement reflects a society becoming really sophisticated, symbolically and technically.
And the sculpture from this time, specific purpose, right? Ceremonial, representing royalty.
Heavily focused on that. Materials like limestone, granite, sometimes rarer wood, clay, bronze. And the style in sculpture or painting feels consistent.
Compact, solid, serene, idealized features. That idealization seems key.
Absolutely. It wasn't about a photographic likeness as we think of it. It was about conveying the eternal divine nature of the pharaoh. Power, stability, cosmic connection.
Contrasting with the more realistic statues of commoners.
Right, highlighting different social roles.
Hmm.
And those inlaid eyes, they really give the statues a sense of life, don't they?
Yeah, and there was this canon of the human figure that developed early on, a set of rules for representing people.
Yes, artistic rules, proportions, a model used in reliefs and paintings. It shows their art wasn't just decorative.
It served a purpose within religion and maybe propaganda.
Precisely. Both propaganda and instruction. Conveying information about gods, Pharaoh's authority, the correct order of the world, a visual language with its own rules.
Later in New Kingdom, the focus shifts architecturally, from tombs mainly to grand temples, Amun, mortuary shrines.
We see that shift. At Shepset's mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahri, amazing example. Ascending colonnades, terraces, ramps built right into the cliffs.
Stunning. And Amenhotep III's huge temple and recreational complex, it's a noticeable change in emphasis.
It is. The scale of New Kingdom temples reflects the empire's wealth and power at its height. This shift towards massive temples for deities in the royal cult indicates changing religious and political priorities. Hatshepsut's temple integrates architecture and landscape incredibly powerfully.
The encyclopedia also mentions the Ben, or Pyramidion, that symbolic stone of Re at Heliopolis.
Yes, pyramidal, sun rays, linked to resurrection, the god Adam.
And it influenced the pyramid builders, gigantic Bens for rituals.
It connects the pyramid shape directly to core beliefs about creation, rebirth, the primeval mound idea.
Emerging from the waters of chaos.
Exactly. The Ben stone was incredibly potent, representing that mound. Its shape, its link to the sun god Re. It was a natural symbol for the pyramid's peak.
Linking the burial to resurrection, eternal life.
The pyramids themselves become colossal Bens in a way, reinforcing the pharaoh's divine connection and journey to the afterlife.
And that whole concept of eternity, it seems like the fundamental driving force behind so much mortuary rites, art, architecture.
It really permeated the culture. Their monuments, mostly mortuary because they use stone, are testaments to contemplating eternity.
Pyramids symbolizing everlasting power. Tombs and temples as gateways to the Tuat, the underworld.
And the pharaoh as Re in life, Osiris in death, destined for eternal happiness? But eternity was a common destination, a goal for many.
The whole worldview shaped by what happens after death. Monuments, rituals, art, all geared towards ensuring that successful transition, achieving eternal existence.
The pharaoh's role as intermediary just underscored the importance of these preparations for everyone.
And to help ensure that continued existence, they had the Ka, the life force, spiritual double.
Yes, the Ka, and they'd hire a Ka servant, a mortuary priest.
Paid by endowments, performing daily services for the Ka.
Right, altars and mortuary temples, and those serdabs enclosed chambers with statues.
So the statue could witness the rituals.
That was the belief. It highlights their profound dread of, well, nothingness, oblivion, the importance of being remembered, having your name recited.
To ensure continued existence.
The Ka servant system shows both practical and deeply spiritual dimensions. That fear of nothingness motivated these elaborate systems of care, all designed to sustain the spirit. Reciting the name was crucial, believed to keep their memory, their being, alive.
So coming back up from this deep dive, it's hard not to be struck by a few things. The sheer scale of those early burials, like the Mother of Pots hinting at early power, their incredible ingenuity harnessing the Nile, making the desert bloom.
The engineering was remarkable.
The long, complex history with Nubia trade, dominance, shifts over centuries.
A relationship that really evolved.
And underlying it all, those profound beliefs about eternity shaping everything from offerings to pyramids.
Absolutely. What's so compelling is how all these different pieces, the pottery at El Ga'ab, the canals in the Fayum, the fortresses in Nubia, the Giza pyramids, they all fit together.
They paint a picture
Of a remarkably cohesive worldview, a set of deeply held priorities guiding them for millennia. The Mother of Pots speaks of early ambition, providing for the afterlife. The pyramids. Immense power, yes, but also that profound yearning for eternity.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? What was the ultimate driving force early on? What let this monumental civilization take root and last so long?
Was it the strength of their beliefs, the sheer necessity of cooperating along the Nile?
Or the ambition of those early rulers, leaving such indelible marks?
And, maybe more profoundly, what aspects of their understanding of life, death, that striving for meaning, for permanence, what might still resonate with us today?
Thousands of years later, it's certainly a lot to ponder.